My husband emptied our entire savings account while I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed. What he didn't know was that his betrayal would cost him everything. Before I tell you what happened, you need to understand who Daniel was. At least, who I thought he was. Daniel was 6'2", with dark brown hair that was always slightly messy no matter how hard he tried to fix it. He had warm brown eyes, and the kind of smile that could calm me down even on my worst days. But what made me fall in love with him wasn't the way he looked. It was the way he treated people. Daniel was patient. Kind. The type of man who would stop his car to help a stranger change a flat tire. The type of man who remembered birthdays without needing reminders. The type of man who would wake up early on a Saturday morning just to bring me coffee in bed. Everyone loved him. My family loved him. My friends loved him. Even people who had only met him once seemed to trust him. Most importantly, I trusted him. Completely. There was never a moment in our marriage when I felt the need to check his phone. Never a moment when I questioned where he was going. Never a moment when I doubted his loyalty. People always talk about trust like it's something fragile. Ours wasn't. Or at least that's what I believed. For 7 years, Daniel was my safe place. If something good happened, he was the first person I wanted to tell. If something bad happened, he was the person I ran to. That's why, when the worst moment of my life arrived, I wasn't afraid. Because I knew Daniel would be there. Or at least, I thought he would. The day everything changed started like any other. I woke up early. Daniel was already in the kitchen making breakfast. I remember standing in the doorway watching him. He looked up, smiled, and asked if I wanted pancakes or eggs. I laughed and told him both. Neither of us knew that within 24 hours, my life would begin falling apart. And neither of us knew that the man standing in that kitchen would eventually become the last person I could trust. After we finished breakfast, Daniel gave me a quick kiss on the forehead and left for work, just like any other morning. I decided I would tidy up the house since he made breakfast. After all, I wanted to keep things in order before I headed out to work. I cleaned the kitchen, tidied the living room, and by the time I finished, I felt ready to leave. But as I sat in the car driving to work, a slight ache started in my lower stomach. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just the usual cramps I sometimes got before my period. But when I checked the calendar, I realized it wasn't supposed to come for another week. I tried not to worry. I thought maybe it was just indigestion, so I took some over-the-counter meds. At first, the ache eased a bit, but after a couple of hours, it came back, stronger. I powered through the rest of work, thinking maybe I was just exhausted. But when I got home, Daniel was already in the kitchen making dinner. He greeted me with that warm smile, took my bag, and handed me a glass of water, settling me down at the table. I took a few sips and ate, but he could tell something was off. He asked if I was okay, and I told him it was just my stomach acting up, that I'd be fine. After dinner, I went to take a shower, but halfway through, I felt like I couldn't stand up properly. I had to lean against the wall, and that's when Daniel came in, seeing me struggling. Without saying much, he scooped me up, and I felt this surge of relief just being close to him. He took me straight to the hospital, and once we got there, the doctors ran a scan and some tests. And that's when we heard the word, appendix. It had ruptured. My heart sank. They told us I needed emergency surgery. And all I could think about was Daniel, standing by my side, holding my hand, promising me I'd be okay. As they wheeled me toward the OR, the last thing in my mind was that I just needed to come back to him, because he was everything to me. After the surgery, I stayed in the hospital for a few days, and Daniel never left. He was always there, even from work. He'd come in the morning, bring me dinner in the evening, and he'd make me laugh, telling me stories just like he always did. But then, on the third day, as he was reading me a story to keep me calm, that same number kept calling almost 4 times in a minute. He got visibly frustrated, stood up, and went to the bathroom to take the call. And that's when I knew I had to find out what was going on. I mustered all the strength I had, and when he stepped away, I leaned in, just enough to hear him say, "Don't call me until I call you back. I'll call you when I'm not with her." My chest tightened. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I didn't want to let these doubts creep in, because I loved him so much, and I couldn't imagine living without him. But then, the next morning, I waited for him to come by with breakfast like he always did, and he didn't come until evening. I didn't eat all day. When he finally arrived, he looked exhausted, and I saw that he was drunk. I couldn't help but ask, "How could you drink like this when you know I'm here, when I can't even move on my own? Who were you with?" And I just kept wondering, how did everything shift so fast? How did my safe place become something so uncertain? That question stayed in my mind long after Daniel left that night. The next morning, he apologized for not coming earlier. He blamed work. Said there had been an emergency meeting he couldn't get out of. I wanted to believe him. So I did. After all, Daniel had never given me a reason not to trust him before. When I was finally discharged from the hospital a few days later, life slowly started returning to normal. At least on the surface. Daniel went back to work. I focused on recovering. And every time that strange feeling of doubt crept into my mind, I pushed it away. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself the stress of surgery was affecting me. I told myself I was imagining things. Then Daniel left for a 3-day business trip. Again, nothing unusual. His job required travel sometimes. It wasn't often, but it happened. He kissed me goodbye and promised he'd call every night. Everything seemed normal. Until he came home. The first thing I noticed was how distracted he seemed. Not guilty. Just distant. Like part of him was somewhere else. When I spoke, he sometimes took a few seconds to respond. When we watched television together, he spent more time looking at his phone than at the screen. Every time I asked if something was wrong, he smiled and blamed work. Just tired, he would say. And every time, I accepted the answer. A few days later, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in the pocket of one of his jackets. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then I looked closer. It was from a hotel. Not in our city. The same city he had supposedly visited for work. I stared at it for a long moment. Maybe his company booked the room. Maybe it was perfectly innocent. Maybe I was overthinking. That was becoming my favorite word. Maybe. So I threw the receipt away and forgot about it. Or, at least I tried to. A week later, another small thing happened. Daniel left his car unlocked. I was looking for a charger when I found a small gift bag tucked under the passenger seat. Inside was a jewelry store receipt. An expensive necklace. My first reaction was excitement. Maybe it was for me. Maybe he was planning a surprise. But weeks passed. Then a month. No necklace ever appeared.
No birthday. No anniversary.
No special occasion. Nothing. I asked him casually one evening if he'd been shopping recently. He barely looked up from his phone.
No.
Why? The answer came too quickly. Too naturally. And that was the moment the receipt stopped feeling innocent. Still, I said nothing. I wanted an explanation that made sense. I wanted everything to be normal again. But the small things kept piling up. A password suddenly appeared on his phone after years of not having one. Late-night texts he answered in another room. Calls he declined without explanation. Business trips becoming more frequent. Excuses becoming shorter. And every single time, I found a reason to defend him. Because the alternative was too painful to consider. The alternative meant accepting that the man I trusted with my life might be hiding something from me. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Then one afternoon, while organizing paperwork in our home office, I opened a drawer looking for insurance documents. Instead, I found an envelope. Inside was another hotel receipt. Different hotel. Different city. Same pattern. And a restaurant bill. Dinner for 2.
Wine.
Dessert. 2 meals. Not 1. I sat there staring at the paper. My hands suddenly cold. My heart suddenly racing. Because for the first time, I couldn't find a reasonable explanation. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if something was wrong. For 2 days, I carried those receipts around in my mind. I tried to ignore them. Tried to find innocent explanations. But every time I looked at Daniel, those papers flashed through my mind. The restaurant. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. One evening, after dinner, I placed the receipts on the kitchen counter. Daniel looked down at them. Then, at me. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Not panic. Not guilt. Calculation. What are these? I asked quietly. He picked up the hotel receipt first. His answer came so quickly, it was almost impressive. The company booked that for me during the retreat. I frowned. You never mentioned staying at a hotel. He shrugged. It wasn't important. Then he picked up the restaurant bill. That's easy, he said. My manager and I had dinner after one of the meetings. Just the 2 of you? Yes. His answer came without hesitation. Like he'd already rehearsed it. Then I handed him the jewelry receipt. The expensive necklace. The one I had never seen. For the first time, he laughed. Actually laughed. You've been worrying about this? I stared at him. Then explain it. He shook his head. Our department was trying to impress upper management before promotion reviews. A few of us pitched in for a gift. The explanation sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Like every answer fit perfectly into place. And I hated that. Because I couldn't prove he was lying. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was. I looked at him. Then why are you acting different? His expression changed immediately. Not angry. Disappointed. Or at least he pretended to be. You've been distant for weeks. Daniel sighed heavily. Then, he sat down across from me. Do you know how hard I've been working lately? I didn't answer. I'm trying to build a future for us. His voice was calm. Measured. I've been taking extra responsibilities. Extra travel. Extra meetings. He leaned forward. And instead of supporting me, you're digging through my things looking for reasons not to trust me. The words hit harder than I expected. Suddenly, I felt guilty. Even though I had been the one finding suspicious things. He made it sound like I had done something wrong. I wasn't digging through your things. Then, how did you find all of this? I opened my mouth. Then closed it. Because suddenly I felt ridiculous. Daniel rubbed his forehead. I can't believe we're even having this conversation. His voice softened. After everything we've been through. I felt my confidence slipping.
Piece by piece.
Do you really think I'd do that to you? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know anymore. He reached for my hand. You know me. The worst part? I wanted to believe him. I wanted him to be telling the truth. I wanted all of this to disappear. By the end of the conversation, I felt like the crazy one. Like maybe I had let stress and fear get into my head. Like maybe I had imagined all of it. So I apologized. And Daniel accepted the apology. As if I had been the one who needed forgiveness. But something still didn't sit right. The next day, I called his mother. If anyone could help me understand, it would be her. She had always treated me like family. Or at least I thought she had. I explained everything. The hotel receipts. The jewelry. The phone calls. The late nights. The business trips. I expected concern. Instead, she sighed. A long, irritated sigh. Honey, she said, you need to stop looking for problems where there aren't any. I felt my stomach drop. What? Daniel works hard. I know that. Then trust him. Her tone became sharper. Why are you searching through your husband's belongings in the first place? I sat there stunned. I wasn't searching. Men need space. The words hit me like a slap. Do you know how many women would be grateful to have a husband who provides the way Daniel does? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She continued. Sometimes wives create problems because they're bored. My chest tightened. I'm not creating anything. Then stop acting suspicious. Her voice softened slightly. Sweetheart, marriage requires trust.
Trust.
The one thing I was desperately trying to hold on to. By the time the call ended, I felt worse than before. Daniel had made me question myself. And for a while, it worked. I convinced myself they were right. I convinced myself that I was paranoid. I convinced myself that I needed to let it go. But deep down, a small voice kept whispering the same thing. If everything was innocent, why did every answer feel rehearsed? And why did I feel more alone now than I had when I was lying in that hospital bed? After my conversation with Daniel's mother, I spent days questioning myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was looking for problems where there weren't any. Maybe the surgery had affected me more than I realized. Maybe I had become suspicious. Maybe I had become paranoid. For a while, things even seemed normal again. Or, at least, normal on the surface. And that's when I saw Daniel. At first, I smiled. Then I saw who he was with. The same woman he had claimed was his manager. The same woman from the company photographs he had shown me. They were standing outside the restaurant laughing together. Not the polite laughter of coworkers. Not the forced laughter of business associates. The comfortable laughter of two people who enjoyed being together. I watched him touch her arm. I watched her lean toward him. And suddenly, every excuse he had ever given me started replaying in my head. I drove away before either of them saw me. That evening, I confronted him. Immediately, he smiled. Oh, that's Rachel. The manager?
Yeah.
We had a client meeting. The answer came so naturally that I almost felt embarrassed for questioning him. Almost. Then he showed me company photographs. And there she was. Standing beside executives. Standing beside him. Everything looked innocent. Everything looked normal. And once again, I started questioning myself. A few days later, I stopped by a department store after work. I was walking through the clothing section when something caught my attention. A jacket. Not just any jacket. Daniel's jacket. The custom company jacket from his leadership retreat. The one with his initials embroidered inside. Except Daniel wasn't wearing it. A woman was. My stomach immediately tightened. Then she turned around. And I recognized her. Rachel. The manager. The same woman from the restaurant. I stood frozen. Daniel. His face lost all color the second he saw me. Nobody spoke. Then he finally said it. This isn't what it looks like. The drive home was awful. The argument lasted for hours. Every answer he gave sounded rehearsed. The dinners were business. The calls were work-related. The trips were professional. Every explanation sounded weaker than the last. The next morning, Daniel left for work. Around lunchtime, I walked into our home office. I sat down at the computer and logged into our joint account. The balance couldn't be right. I refreshed the page. Then refreshed it again. The numbers stayed the same. I opened the transaction history. And suddenly, everything made sense. Thousands of dollars. Then, tens of thousands. Transfer after transfer. Hotel charges. Jewelry stores. Restaurants. Luxury purchases. Vacation bookings. Cash withdrawals. Months. He'd been doing this for months. Our savings account was almost empty. The account we'd spent years building together. The account we planned our future around.
Gone.
My hands started shaking. I immediately began taking screenshots. Every transaction. Every statement. Every balance. Every transfer. I emailed everything to myself. Backed up every file. Saved every piece of evidence. By the time I finished, I was crying. Not because of the money. Because suddenly every lie connected together. The affair. The gifts. The hotels. The missing money. Everything. That evening, I confronted Daniel. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw genuine panic flash across Daniel's face. Only for a second. Then it disappeared. Immediately replaced by another explanation. Another excuse. Another lie. Investment opportunities. Business ventures. Promises to replace the money. Nothing made sense. Nothing added up. And somehow, by the end of the conversation, he was still trying to convince me that I was the problem. That I was spying on him. That I was invading his privacy. That I didn't trust him.
Trust.
The word almost made me laugh. The man who had emptied our savings account was standing in front of me, lecturing me about trust. The next morning, Daniel's mother came over. Apparently, he had already called her and told her his version of events. Then she listened to me. I showed her the transactions. I showed her the missing money. I explained everything. The receipts. The lies. The disappearing savings. And somehow, she still took his side. Trust? I asked. He emptied our savings account. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When I mentioned the other woman, she rolled her eyes. When I mentioned the lies, she defended him. When I mentioned the missing money, she called it a misunderstanding. By the time she left, I felt completely alone. Not because nobody believed me, because the people who should have believed me refused to. That night, I barely slept. I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the years we had spent together, thinking about the future we had planned, thinking about how quickly trust can disappear. By sunrise, I had made my decision. The next morning, I packed a suitcase. Daniel followed me through the house. At first, he begged. Then he apologized. Then he promised things would change. The cycle repeated itself over and over. Or maybe it had finally healed. Because for the first time, I wasn't listening. I picked up my suitcase, walked to my car, and drove straight to my sister's house. The moment she opened the door, I burst into tears. The affair, the lies, the missing money, the months of feeling like I was losing my mind. My sister didn't interrupt. She didn't defend him. She didn't tell me to be patient. She simply listened. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt heard. The weeks that followed were brutal. Daniel called constantly. When I stopped answering, he started texting. When that didn't work, he found a new strategy. He started telling people his version of the story. And according to Daniel's version, I was the villain. He told people I was obsessed with money. He told people I controlled everything. He told people I monitored every purchase he made. He told people I abandoned him. He told people I became paranoid after my surgery. He told people I was unstable. Some people believed him. That hurt more than I expected. Friends became distant. Relatives stopped checking in. People who once supported me suddenly acted differently. A few even suggested I should have tried harder to save my marriage. As if I hadn't spent months trying. As if trust alone could repair betrayal. For a while, I wanted to defend myself. I wanted everyone to know the truth. Then I realized something. People who truly cared about me would eventually see it. So, I stopped trying to convince everyone. Instead, I focused on surviving. Money became a challenge almost immediately. Most of our savings were gone. The future I thought I had disappeared overnight. I started working extra hours. I cut expenses. I saved every dollar I could. A few months later, I found a tiny apartment. It wasn't glamorous. The building was old. The kitchen was small. The paint was chipped in places. But it was mine. The first night there, I sat alone eating takeout from a cardboard container. And I cried. Not because I missed Daniel. Because I missed the life I thought I had. For 7 years, I had shared meals with someone. Now, there was only an empty chair across from me. The loneliness was overwhelming. Some nights, I couldn't sleep. Some mornings, I didn't want to get out of bed. Trust became difficult. With everyone. I questioned people's motives. I questioned kindness. I questioned myself. Eventually, my sister convinced me to start therapy. At first, I resisted. Then, I realized I needed help. The first few sessions were difficult. But slowly, things started changing. My therapist helped me understand something important. Daniel hadn't just broken my heart. He had broken my confidence in myself. Months of lies and manipulation had made me doubt my own instincts. My own judgment. My own reality. Therapy helped me rebuild those things. One piece at a time. 3 months after I left, the divorce proceedings were already underway. One afternoon, I returned to the house to collect the last of my belongings. Daniel wasn't there. Old photographs. Books. Little pieces of a life I was leaving behind. Then I walked into the home office. That's when I saw the envelope. At first, I almost ignored it. Then I noticed the company logo. Daniel's company. Something felt off. I opened it. Inside were financial reports, expense statements, internal documents. I sat down and started reading. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then the pattern became obvious. Money was missing. Large amounts. Repeatedly. Unauthorized transfers. Suspicious approvals. Transactions that didn't make sense. My heart started racing. The more I read, the worse it became. Suddenly, everything clicked. The expensive dinners. The hotels. The gifts. The vacations. The spending. Daniel wasn't paying for those things with his salary. He was stealing. Not just from me. From his company. I photographed every single page. Every transaction. Every report. Every document. Then I emailed everything directly to my lawyer. A few weeks later, the investigation started. And once it started, everything fell apart. More documents surfaced. More evidence appeared. More lies were exposed. The affair came out. Then another affair. Then financial misconduct. Then fraud. The same people who once believed Daniel started realizing they had been manipulated. Some called to apologize. Others disappeared out of embarrassment. A few admitted they should have listened to me from the beginning. The most surprising call came from Daniel's mother. Months earlier, she had defended him. Now her voice sounded exhausted. Broken. She apologized. For not listening. For dismissing my concerns. For making me feel like I was the problem. I accepted her apology. Not because it erased the past. Because carrying anger had become exhausting. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. And strangely, I didn't feel sadness. I felt relief. The kind of relief that comes when you've been carrying something heavy for far too long. Daniel lost his job. The criminal investigation continued. Eventually, he was convicted for the fraud. The same greed that had emptied our savings account ended up destroying everything he had built. His career, his reputation, his freedom, everything. And despite everything he had done to me, watching it happen didn't make me happy. It just made me realize how much energy I had wasted trying to save someone who never wanted to save himself. Therapy continued. Life moved forward.
Slowly.
Then faster. I made new friends, reconnected with old ones, created routines, built a life that... One evening, I was sitting in my tiny apartment eating dinner when something unexpected happened. I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes naturally. And suddenly I realized something. I had gone an entire day without thinking about Daniel. Then an entire week. Then a month. The pain that once consumed every part of my life had finally loosened its grip. And that was when I understood something. Daniel thought emptying our savings account would leave me with nothing. He thought the lies would destroy me. He thought the betrayal would break me. Instead, it forced me to rebuild. And in rebuilding, I found a version of myself that was stronger than the one who walked into that marriage. The funny thing about betrayal is that it feels like the end of your story. But sometimes it's only the beginning of a better one. Daniel lost his marriage, his reputation, his future. But I gained something far more valuable. My freedom. And for the first time in years, I finally felt at peace.